Thank you for joining me for another episode of Think Your Way to an Epic Life. Are you in a place where you're not sure that you're doing what you're supposed to be doing? Are you feeling a little uneasy? Like, man, I think there's something else I should be doing, but I don't know what it is. My next guest can help you figure that out, and he has a free workbook that you can download to help you figure out your purpose. How many of you would love to know what your purpose is? I hope you enjoy this podcast. All right, Mark Aylward, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Kara.
It is a pleasure. And so I've checked you out pretty thoroughly, and you are a jack of a lot of different trades. So let's start off and just give me a little bit of your background, what got you to this point in life.
Yeah, I'll try and condense that for your audience. I basically started out as a technical recruiter in my mid-20s. Prior to that, I was kind of wandering, as many of us do at that age, and wondering what I should be or wanted to be. But I got into that early, and from the first 5 years or so, I was actually a recruiter, and then I moved into sales, and pretty quickly found my mentor, and he asked me if I wanted to help him start a company down in Florida, and I said sure. Another long story behind that, but then I began learning how to start a company and build a company, all along recruiting, selling, managing recruiters, managing salespeople as things expanded, and then absorbing all the operational learning that he allowed me to to come into. So it was really like a really nice rapid education in real life, how to run a recruiting company and start one. And so I was always helping people find work. I was always teaching people how to find work and how to teach people how to find work. And as I mentioned to you in the pregame a little bit, that evolved into leadership because those people eventually started to aspire to become leaders. You know, the programmer I placed 30 years ago is probably a CIO right now. And so I followed those people on their trajectories, the ones that where we saw eye to eye, and some really wonderful experiences and growth and opportunity, and then some personal stuff, including my children becoming young adults and moving away, put me in a position where I wanted to be more mobile. So after I sold my last company, I started coaching, and that allowed me to take all that knowledge of helping people move professionally upward and aspiring to leadership and everything connected to that, communication, negotiation, all of that stuff. But I could do that from anywhere. I could do that from gymnasiums and PTA meetings and things of that nature as they grew, and that's what I've been doing. Is sharing that knowledge with whoever's interested, and packaging it in different ways as my desire to scale the business, and not always be attached to having to be present to pass on the training, which I'm sure you're familiar with. We're all familiar with that challenge now, but that's how I ended up where I am.
Okay. That was definitely the Reader's Digest condensed version, and I'm
Okay,
going to unpack a little bit of it.
please do.
How important do you feel, like you talked about your mentor very with a lot of respect? How important is it for someone to find that mentor?
It's a great question. It's like one of my favorite questions. It's the most important thing in the world. I mean, it expedites everything. It moves you from a theoretical space into a practical space like that. And 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 I talk to people about this all the time, particularly young people, is to pay attention to the people around you wherever you are, because your mentor could be right next to you and you won't know. So I was paying attention when he was introduced to me, and I immediately recognized this guy's really smart, and he is where I would like to be someday. So I'm just going to ask him, if you teach me everything and give me a little, paycheck on the side, I'll do all the work if you tell me what to do. And so I don't know if that was a unique relationship. I suspect it probably was. And you might not find your mentor on the first try, because there's worldview, there's, morality and ethics. You have certain things that you need to insist on to remain who you are. And maybe that first choice isn't that person. So it's not as black and white as it might seem, but oh man, it's so important. Number one.
Number one thing. Okay, so you find your mentor, you get introduced to him, you identify him, you believe he's the one, or in some people's case, she's the one. You believe that they're the one. How do you get them to pay attention to you?
My circumstances were I was introduced to him through a young lady that I had worked with for a few years, and we were playing golf one day, and I was in flux. I didn't know what I was doing or where I wanted to go, and I explained to her some of this was personal. I was becoming a dad, a big deal, and needed to really step up. And she heard my story over 4 hours of playing golf and having a couple of beers, and said, "You got to meet Paul." I'm like, "Who's Paul?" And the next day I was sitting down with him, and so I got lucky, I suppose. But I had also earned the right to be referable, if that makes sense.
Explain that. Explain that. What did you do to earn that right that someone would
Well,
trust?
I worked closely with this young lady in a bullpen, a boiler room recruiting. We were both learning what to do, so it was very much like playing on a sports team, and we were in the locker room, and there were no holds barred. There were no. It was God bless her for lasting for 3 years with all these guys. But she knew I could be trusted. She knew I was good. She knew I was smart. She knew I was honest. And I had 3 years to show that to her. And I think that a lot of people out there were afraid to ask for help. And when we ask for help, we haven't necessarily positioned ourselves to having earned that referability yet because we're not conscious or aware that that's a thing. And sometimes we've already earned it and we don't even know just because we did a good job. But it has to be to feel good about asking for help from someone. I think you need to be referable. I think that needs to be part of your package. And I help people prepare for that too, because a lot of us don't think of that.
It's so important. Manners, integrity are things that are missing in a lot of ways. So, what is your definition of integrity?
I would probably start off with do what you say you're going to do. In the recruiting business, you'll see it. I mean, if all you have to do is look into that world, and you'll see complaints about I didn't get any feedback, nobody called me back, nobody returned my phone call, they didn't show up for the interview. They said they were going to send a resume and they never did. It's some of it's very simple stuff. And I told my kids, because all my kids are, late 20s, early 30s right now. They're functioning adults, sentient beings. I'm like, if you're not going to do it, don't say you're going to do it. It's very simple. Right. And the other thing, Kara, that I find it's both sad and interesting to me at the same time is if you do exactly what you say you're going to do all the time, you're in the top 5% of whatever you're doing, you know? So it's not just simple, it's really important.
Oh, it's the ultimate important, and something that I've kind of learned recently, maybe not that recently, but I think it's absolutely fascinating because integrity is doing what you say you're going to do, even if no one's looking.
Mm-hmm.
However, most people don't have integrity with themselves.
Yes.
Most people have on their calendar, I'm going to work out 5 days a week, and they see that every day and they ignore it. And what happens to a person when they don't do what they say they're going to do for themselves?
Yeah, it's a very interesting place to be. It's there's guilt, there's fear, there's anxiety, there's shame, and these are all the emotions that I've been playing with people for 35 years. Because when you're looking for something else, maybe you lost your job, maybe you got fired, maybe you got laid off. All those emotions just percolate. And I talk a lot about self awareness because I think it all starts there. It's like, okay, well, am I self aware? Well, what does that mean? Well, am I being honest with myself about who I am and what I'm good at and what I could use some help with? And I think you're right. I think most people don't really go through that exercise on a regular basis because you got to refresh that exercise pretty much every day.
Isn't it crazy? Our homeostasis is so powerful.
Yeah,
It drives me crazy. Little kids who are beaten want to go back to be with mommy or be with daddy because
yeah,
that's what they know.
yeah,
And
yeah,
and humans, adult humans, sentient beings, as you said,
yeah,
they do the
yeah,
same thing. We do the same thing.
yeah,
So
yeah.
someone is at a very, very vulnerable and weak point when they've lost their job for whatever reason. How do you
Yeah.
handle that emotion?
Yeah. Well, I'm first and foremost, I'm sensitive to it. I'm aware of it. I don't take it for granted because, and I don't know. I suppose my parents get some credit for this because that kind of stuff the seedlings for that stuff I suppose start out early, but just taking it seriously and understanding, I don't push sensitivity on people. I grew up playing team sports in an era where sensitivity had no space, but that doesn't mean I'm not sensitive. So being aware of, hey, this person's in a tough place right now, let me ask a couple questions. Let me gather some additional context around that place so I can be more specific with my suggestions or my advice or my questions. But I think being sensitive to it is everything. Because if you're not, then you can't do any of the other work.
Yeah, you've got to get past that.
Mm-hmm.
So basically you're an employment counselor coach.
Yeah, I'd say I'm wrestling with the words. I was, interestingly enough, just this morning in the shower, I thought of this concept because I've been really wrestling with my niche because I can help everyone. And that sounds like a wonderful thing, but you can't market to everyone, you can't sell to everyone, you can't get everyone's interest. So I'm moving more towards men, I'm moving more towards middle age, moving more towards, legacy, leaving a legacy, serving other people, becoming more valuable. And I was thinking to myself, well, what's my name? My name is Mark. Well, how about leaving a mark? You want to leave a mark.
Oh, that's
And I
brilliant.
kind of I kind of like that. You're the
That's
first person
brilliant.
I've shared it with.
That is brilliant. It truly is. And if you, and the thing is that I don't think maybe you even realize you spend most of your waking hours at work.
Yeah.
And for you to leave a mark and then them to love their job, then what happens? They love their family more, they love their life more. It is very cool what you're doing.
Yeah, thank you, Kara. I think that I'm sensitive as well to this notion that there's, maybe five important areas of our lives, and depending on your faith, that might be God, your family, your health, how you view money, relationships, things like that. And I think that what I've found is when I've delved into a new relationship with a candidate or a client, the way that I look at the world, the way that I do my job for my own satisfaction is I really have to get into their personal lives as well. What motivates them? What are they interested in? What's important to them? Not to be invasive, just because I don't think you can do one well without the other, because all those things are important in your decision making process. You know?
Isn't it incredible that you work on one area? Let's say it's your physical body. You work on your physical body and then all the other areas get better.
Mm-hmm. Yep,
We are so you have a holistic approach to the person.
I do. I do. Yeah, and I don't know that it was even intentional. It's just like, well, this just feels right to me, you know. Of course, how does your wife feel about this? What do the kids think? Have you talked to a realtor about moving? Like, what's important to you at work? Is it money that's driving you, or is it something else, a challenge, learning new things, being appreciated? What is it? What's driving you? What's important to you? I don't think you can do a good job professionally in that space without delving into the personal side of it as well. I just don't think I can't.
Well, I agree with you. You really can't because we are whole people. And just like I said, when you work on one area, everything gets better. When one area goes down, everything gets worse.
Yeah. Well, unfortunately, I have experience with that as well.
I'm afraid we all do.
I know.
That's the thing about success is you learn so much more from your failures than you do from your successes.
Yeah, you sure do. I mean, well, you should, I suppose, is maybe a better way. I also find that I learn a lot more teaching. You teach other people, you find out kind of where the holes are, where the gaps are, where the opportunities are, where the challenges are. So that's one of the reasons I love teaching, whatever you want to call it, coaching, consulting, is because I always learn from other people every time.
Well, absolutely. I'm a coach as well, and I learn from them, and I learned so much on this podcast. It's not even funny.
Yeah, I
It
bet.
is so cool to be in this seat and get to talk to people like yourself that have been there and done it and pick up little tips. And I've got my notes. I'm taking notes. I'm not, I'm definitely not finished learning. How
Oh
about you?
no, 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 never. One of the things my mentor harped on, and I think I've found it to be true, is that one of the most important things you can give someone if you're going to hire someone is the opportunity to learn new things, to remain challenged. And you could list a top three. I think appreciation. I don't think compensation's even in the top three. I think the compensation is a byproduct of some of the others. It comes if these other things are in place, but appreciation and being challenged and learning new things are at the top of my list.
People will do, I heard this, I wish I could take credit for this. People will do more for praises than they will for raises.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And it is so true. I had when I very first got into real estate 22 years ago, I had a qualifying broker. I went into his office, had a one-on-one with him. As I'm walking out, he reaches over and he literally patted me on the back. He's like, "Good job." I can today still feel that pat on the back.
Oh
I mean,
yeah.
that meant more to me than the paychecks, it's a big deal.
Yeah, yeah. One of the things that I've discovered, because I also go inside of organizations, typically information technology departments with the CIO or VP of development, somebody at a decision-making level, but they oversee the technology component of the company. But it's all the same. The communication is siloed. People aren't talking to one another. People are afraid of bringing things up for fear of being criticized or punished. And it's really the opportunities there inside corporate America are astounding to me, because when I've had the opportunity to break the silos down and to encourage innovation and positive feedback and things of that, people just blossom. It's like, oh, I have permission to do that. I'm like, you don't have just permission, you're encouraged to do that, you know and it's amazing to me how much of that exists, those restrictions, those limitations that cultures impose upon themselves.
I just did a podcast. His name is Greg. I don't remember his last name. I just did a podcast with him, and I learned he is a C-suite leader. He is at the very top of what he does, and he's an introvert.
Mm.
And it is so interesting. He says that the idea of brainstorming is really a joke because 50% of the people won't say a word, and you're losing half of the good ideas. So instead of a brainstorm, you say, "This is our topic. Every one of you come in here with 3 ideas, and then we'll talk about every single person's ideas." And imagine what that would do.
Yeah.
Like it explodes.
Yeah, no, it's a great idea. It's a way to you got to get the people involved that aren't willing or comfortable speaking up, and there's a number of ways to do it. That the way he's doing it is a great idea. Very simple. That's great.
Yeah. What other ideas do you have? Add on.
Um, I used to have 10 salespeople in a room, 10, 15, and I would alternate between everyone take notes and then pass them in, and I'll have my group go through them and we'll disseminate back to you the summary of ideas. But then I got this idea one day, I'm just going to have one person take notes, and then I'm going to rotate that responsibility around. So not everyone's going to take notes. And I went back and forth, and I was amazed when everyone was taking notes, and let's say 10 just for a round number. I got 10 completely different set of notes. It was the same person, the same room. I said exactly the same thing, and everyone took away a different interpretation. And so when I would go back and forth with both of those, it opened up a lot of interesting conversations. And I just found myself encouraging people to talk all the time. I used to tell people my open door policy is not just a cliche. I want to hear from all of you, but I don't want anyone coming to me with problems. I want you coming to me with problems and 1 to 3 suggested solutions. And so don't bother. I mean, I don't need any problems. I got plenty of problems. I don't need any more complaints. We all have plenty of complaints. Solutions, however, those are interesting to me. And even if we don't use your solution, the fact that you brought thought and energy to the solutioning process is sufficient for me. And we'll both learn in that conversation. So those are just a couple of different ways.
That's brilliant. I love it. That's the whole point is none of us knows everything. But if you were to put, like, if you're in a room with those 10 people, not one of those people is smarter than all of those people. But you're not hearing from all of them a lot of the time. So guys, those are some really good tips if you're running meetings to make it to where everyone feels valued. And then because a lot of times your introverts are the ones that are holding the whole thing together.
Oh, the best ideas. Yeah. No, and the other thing that struck me as you were talking was just noticing is big for me. It's like if I'm in a meeting with 10 people and I say something, I'm going to look around, and people give you facial expressions and body gestures that indicate they've got something to say. And then I won't let them go. I'm like, what are you shrugging your shoulders for? Open your mouth. Come on, let's go. I'm not going to criticize you. Everyone's going to have benefit from whatever it is that's rolling around in your head. Open your mouth. And I would have fun with it.
That's a good way to do it. Have all the fun you can. Okay, so you help people find work. Just take us through an avatar. Your avatar is a male. You told me all that stuff. I didn't write all that down, but
That's okay.
so you're talking to your avatar. They just lost their job, and they come to you. How does it look?
So let's back up just one step, and it used to be that I don't help people find jobs right now transactionally. I won't take someone, send them on an interview, do feedback, close the deal, collect a fee. That's what I spent my whole life doing. And then we moved into consulting where those people would work for me and I would bill them out hourly and charge margins on the, but that that's been behind me for years now. But all of that is you come to me when you are challenged with what to do next and you're ready to hear someone else's opinion on what to do next. And you're ready to invest a little bit of money and time in what to do next. And then we go through a very brief kind of qualification. So I want to qualify to help you, and I want you to be qualified to receive my help. And both of those exchanges of information are equally as important because I can't help anyone who's not ready to be helped. And no one can. And I've made that mistake trying to do that before. So that process has become pretty important to me. It's not, looking up or down at anybody. It's just, this is who I am. This is how I do what I do. Here's what you're telling me. Here's how I think I can help you. What do you think? Yeah, let's go. Mark, I'm not ready. I'll call you back later, or please reach out to me in 6 months, whatever. Much prefer that than let's try and force this issue of me helping you when you're not ready to be helped. So it's really consultative. And right now it's time for money. And that's what I'm trying to figure out how to scale. I'm not trying to figure it out. I'm executing on it in terms of, I got to be able to step away at least a little bit to be able to help more people at one time.
Okay, so someone loses their job. They've watched this podcast. They give you a call, or they set up an appointment. I'm sure for some kind of a Zoom,
Get on my
probably.
calendar. Yep.
Get on your calendar. Go to your calendar, and the first call is a discovery call. And is there a charge for that?
No, no, it's 30 minutes. And I, as you can well imagine, Kara, 35 years in, I can find out what I need to know in about 5 minutes. And so, and I'm not saying that to brag. It just is. And so then at the end of 30 minutes, towards the end of 30 minutes, I'll say, well, here's what I'm hearing. Here's where I think the opportunities are for you. And here's how I would implement some of those. And so I leave people, even if they choose not to pay me for my services moving forward, at least a couple of ideas and usually a workbook or two that's free that I wrote years ago just because I found we're all starting from the same place. I keep going back to the same place. Like, who are you? Who do you want to be? Why do you want to be that person? Why are you doing what you're doing now? And like that whole self-reflection, self-awareness thing. So it's pretty efficient 30 minutes. Most people get a lot out of it. And then it just becomes, here's the structure of moving forward. You in, or should we wait?
Okay. Wow. Okay. So, can you tell us a story? You don't have to give us a name, but can you tell us a story of somebody that you really helped?
You know what's funny? Yes, of course I can. I don't necessarily remember names. First guy I ever placed. Um, I was 26, didn't know what I was doing. He was an electrical engineer before I just specifically started focusing on software. And back then, hardware and software were very distinct. The world is all software now, but there used to be this thing called hardware, and it mattered. But he was a single father of three young sons, and he was about to lose his house. And I found him a job, and I remember it because I remember the day because I was like, oh, this is what God wants me to do. It's like crazy. I'm tearing up thinking about it. But yeah, I'm on the phone in the congratulatory call. He's accepted verbally. He's out of his mind, ecstatic. I saved his life. He said that to me. And my boss is next to me because I'm still learning. And we have this system where he can hear the conversation, but this guy can't hear him. And when he feels an opportunity for me to have a line for the next step, he's going to feed it to me because I don't have it in my experiential brain yet. So my boss goes, and we're like right next to each other, and I'm out of my mind, excited and all kinds of emotion, right? And my boss goes, I got a problem. And I looked at him and I'm like, I'm not saying that. Like I was in my head, I'm like, what? What are you doing to me? You're going to blow this thing up. And I didn't give him any credit at all because I knew him for a couple months at that point. He goes, I got a problem. And I think he said it 3 times before I actually was willing to say it. So there's this silence that we find out later is where all the opportunity is. Just shut up and be quiet. And so I said, I got a problem. And I have no idea what the next line is, right? None. And my guy's like, what do you mean? And all of a sudden he's scared. I'm like, I don't want to do this. What are you doing, dude? What are you making me do here? And then he goes, I just lost my best candidate. Who else do you know that I should be speaking with? And I'm like, oh. And that's when I knew I was working for the right guy. I said, I can learn some stuff from this guy. But holy smokes, I almost dropped an S-bomb on you. It was such an emotional experience. And that's when that it all came together. Thank you for allowing me to remember that story. The rest of it, the stories I've had since have been people. I've had a number of people say that you saved my life. I've had a number of people say you changed my life. And it's really, most of it in reflection, Kara, is me just kind of helping them get out of their own way, helping them understand their own fears, understanding that they're not alone at all, that everyone has these fears, and to overcome them, all we have to do is start by acknowledging them and then take one step at a time, little baby steps consistently over a long period of time, because that's how you get good at anything. But you got to break people open first, and it's usually around some subset of fear. And once you can crack that open, it gets kind of magical. So I got off on a little bit of a tangent there. I hope I answered your question.
You did great. And I know you're going to not believe I'm doing this, but I'm going to go all the way back to the beginning. I'm going to circle back up with your mentor because that's how we started, was with your mentor, and that's how we're going to end. Guys, I want you to understand that what Mark has found and what I have found in my life, I think is rare. And there has to be some things that line up for that to happen for you. However, in today's world, you can rent a mentor. You can hire a coach who can do so much more than even probably both of our mentors could, because they're trained for that. That's what they do. They're there for you. They're going to lead you through. They're going to help you see things that you can't see. It's like you're inside of a jar and the instructions to you are on the outside of the jar. And you can go to Mark and say, hey, I'm struggling. And he's going to ask you some questions and you're going to say something. Something's going to come out of your mouth that stuns you. You're going to go, I never even realized that. Much like you just saw Mark tell that story, right? He's like, I hadn't even thought of that story in so long. And that's what a coach can do. And so if someone wants to give you a call, um, I think it's a great idea. I've never met this guy, but I am really vibing with you really well, and I love where you're coming from.
Yeah, thank you for that sentiment, Kara. That's very generous of you.
Well, I mean, when you see someone who I am a fellow coach, and guys, when you get the right coach, it's just like anything else. When you get the right one, they genuinely care about you, and they can help you because they can see things that you cannot see. And even Tiger Woods had 9 coaches, 9 different coaches. Not one of them was better than him. Why would he hire a coach? Why would he hire a coach, Mark?
Well, I think just the objectivity of being outside looking in alone, you know, and you add to that objectivity, if you can, experience, and then even on top of maybe the knowledge, you also get some wisdom, you know, which is way more valuable than knowledge, as we know. So yeah, it's objectivity and different perspective, you know, that people don't see. I don't see the stuff that other people see about me. It's just human nature, you know?
It is wild. It is so
Yeah.
wild. And
Yeah, it
and
is.
perspective is reality. Much like you were talking about earlier, where you had 10 different people all taking notes and they all heard something completely different. But what they heard is very real to them. It is. And so you kind of need all of us, the very best of the best of the best have coaches, not just one, but they have coaches.
Yep.
And so I don't mean to get on a soapbox. I don't think I've ever gotten on a soapbox like this ever in my entire, we've been doing this podcast a long time, but it's very important. It literally will take you so much faster than you could possibly do on your own.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
um, one of the questions that there's 2 questions that I always ask at the end, but before I do that, is there anything that I should have asked you that I didn't?
No, I don't think so. I mean, on the one hand, I think we could probably stay on this thing for another 4 or 5 hours and not cover everything. But you know, you asked some really good questions, and they got me thinking about some things where I think, yeah, those are areas that I can be helpful in because I enjoy them so much, and I also coincidentally happen to have made a lot of mistakes in all of those areas, having learned from all of them. So, no, I don't think so, Kara. I think great questions.
Okay, very cool. So, what are some books, podcasts, whatever documentaries that you would recommend for our clients, for our listeners?
Well, selfishly speaking, I also have a podcast, and it's called the Imperfect Men's Club, and I do it with my buddy Jim. We're both entrepreneurs. We both were athletes. We're both dads. We see the world in a similar fashion, and we just talk back and forth about things that happen to men in, you know, maybe starting in their 30s, maybe 40s, and continue on through midlife and into later years. And we get funny and a little body. And if you have sensitive ears, don't listen. Um, but I most of the swearing that goes on elicits humor, and that's the purpose of it, not just swearing for swearing's sake. Yeah, anybody might get a kick out of that. I would think that if you went and just gave it 10 minutes, and if you like it, stick around, and if you don't, move on. But that would be one recommendation. The books I love to read, I've read a lot of books. Most recently, the War of Art, Stephen Pressfield, and very interesting background. Didn't get into writing that book or even publishing. His first movie script was The Legend of Bagger Vance, movie, came out years ago about golf. Pretty good movie. I think Will Smith was in it. But yeah, this guy came into his notoriety, and I think in his 50s. But the War of Art is a play on the art of war. The Chinese military guy, I can't remember his name, Sun Tzu. But it's a short read, and it talks about how to be a professional, how to step up to a professional status in anything. He happens to talk about writing, but it applies everywhere. What it means to be a pro. So I think it's quick, it's funny, it's interesting. And then a more recent one was the $1 Trillion Coach, and that was a, an Ivy League football coach of no significant notoriety, who moved in retirement into Silicon Valley and ended up becoming one of the most well-respected coaches. And he coached everybody. Name an IT guy that's a billionaire, and this guy coached him, and nobody's ever heard of him. And he passed away without any notoriety. And the list of people that attended his funeral is astounding.
Huh.
So that's a good one too.
Very fun. I can't wait to read them. Last question. You're on Think Your Way to an Epic Life. So, what tips do you have for our listeners to think their way to an epic life?
Yeah, epic's a great word. Um, I think that we all, myself included, we're safe when we're small, right? No one can see us, no one can hear us. We're not risking much. And then when we want to get a little bigger, puffing your chest a little bit, speaking up, putting a microphone and doing what we're doing now, whatever it is that's bigger to you, expect that there's going to be fear and learn, I think, with practice, because that's the only way you can do it. Just, fall down, fall down, fall down, get up. Oh, cool, I'm up now. Well, how many times do you have to fall down? I don't know. Edison said it. It didn't take me 1,000. I didn't make 1,000 mistakes developing the light bulb. There were 1,000 steps in the process. So I think it's just addressing that fear, saying that's okay. Everyone has that. Mine's unique to me, but I want to kind of break through that, and then just begin to discover what you can do to begin that process. But I think, in my experience, most of us are like, no, that's too scary. I'm not doing that. Nope, that's too scary. I'm not doing that. And if you can get past that, oh man, then have fun.
So, maybe a coach could help you get past that.
The right one. The right one, whether it's me or you or somebody else. But I couldn't agree with you more, Kara. Definitely expedite. What is it? Pay money for the shortcut,
Totally. Literally, guys, pay the money. We've talked about it on this podcast several times. Pay to get in the room. Just it's a massive shortcut. You don't have to wait for someone to notice you and say, "Oh my gosh, you've got potential. I'm going to bring you in and I'm going to help you." They don't
Yep.
do that.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
see that you're out there and you're busting it, and then they'll say, "Okay, come on in."
I know that you're wrapping up here, but it just made me think of one of the things that I would add to the mentor experience of me. Like when he started, he hired me, and it wasn't long before he was paying me six figures. And this is in the 90s, you know. Um, and then at the end, when he sold the company, I had a percentage of ownership in the company. So I was making six figures and then got a big fat check while getting probably the equivalent of two MBAs. And I didn't have any tuition due at the end of that. Nothing. I was making money while he was teaching me how to make more money. So I don't know if that's unique, but that's the nature of what's available to you if you expend the time and energy finding the right mentor. It's not one-sided.
It's not one-sided, and you have to be willing to do whatever it takes. You have to be willing to say, I don't need much of a salary. I'm willing, like Thomas Edison's partner was he was like, he didn't even look decent when he went in, and he knew he would be his partner. He knew, he walked into his office knowing, and he's like, I'll sweep the floors. It doesn't matter. I just
Yep.
need to be in your vicinity. And
Yep.
so guys, when you're looking for that mentor, if it's not a coach that you're paying, do whatever you can for them. I'm not like not like overbearing, but like really figure out what do they need and just handle it for them.
Yeah,
And
we had a couple of funny conversations about our respective moral barriers, and I said, I won't do this. I won't do this. This works. This, I'm not going to violate my own ethical, experiential existence. But in terms of hard work and pride, I'll sweep the floor. I'll empty the trash. I'll paint the walls. You just keep telling me stuff. Just keep teaching me stuff. And as long as it's within my moral compass, let's go. I have no pride about that. Honest work is honest work.
right on. I love it. Man, you're right. We could be on here for another 4 or 5 hours and it would be so much fun. I would love it. But we're going to respect you guys' time. If you liked what you heard today, please share it. Please say something. If you want to communicate with either one of us and you're just not quite like, then just write something in YouTube. We will go back and look at those comments and reply to you. So thank you guys so much. And thank you guys. If you want Mark to leave a mark on your life, give him a call. All of his information is below.
Thanks, Kara.
Thank you.